Hi, it's Jerry Roberts back with another episode of Newsmakers Journal of the Plague Year. It is Wednesday, September 9th. We are talking about Sacramento stuff, and we're so delighted to have with us State Senator Hannah Beth Jackson. How are you doing? Still well?
Well, recovering from one of those fast and furiously kind of indescribable last weeks of session.
Well, anybody who's been up there when session closed knows it gets crazy, but it seems like it's been getting crazier in the last couple of years. Last year, they were throwing vials of blood onto the floor. The anti-vaxxers were, but this year, a lot of it had to be conducted by Zoom because there was a COVID infection among the Republicans in the Senate, and they couldn't be there. So there was a lot of slow down, hide the ball. Give us a quick recap of what that looked like.
Well, what happened was that the Monday before the Monday before the last day of session, which was a Monday, we did a farewell Zoom. Traditionally, when we have members who are termed out or leaving for whatever reason, we do a dinner. And this year, the dinner was by Zoom. So every member got a lovely dinner and some a little bottle of wine that we were supposed to take back to our offices and join in collectively through a Zoom. It was also the night, or one of the nights, of the Republican convention. And what we observed was that actually the Republicans were all together in a single room, probably watching the convention, nobody masked and nobody socially distancing. And it was kind of shocking. The very next day, they did an in-meeting caucus where the 9 or 10 of them who make up the Republican caucus were in the minority leader's office having a caucus, not social distancing, not wearing masks. And of course, the very next few days, one of them tested COVID positive. And so they were required, because the Senate has been, and the legislature is trying to be very diligent about this, although, you can't, nothing's perfect. So they were all quarantined and were not allowed to come into the building. So they had to participate also by remotely. And they were very unhappy about that, which I found to be kind of interesting, that here they had been reckless in their behavior. And one of them had come down and potentially exposed the other 9 with the virus, and they had to participate remotely. They didn't like it. Clearly, they were uncomfortable with it. Clearly, they were not willing to cooperate in terms of the cordiality of the House, the various rules of engagement that we've had for decades there. The Senate has always been a fairly respectful and collegial place. Not this particular last day of session. It was ugly. Clearly, they were trying to delay. Some of the language got pretty foul. And it was just a very, very difficult day when we were trying to get some very important legislation passed, but they were having none of it.
All right. Well, one thing you did get passed, and our friend Nick Welsh describes it as a cliffhanger of a nail biter. I think he's got that backwards, but that's just me. Anyway, your family leave bill, Senate Bill 1383, which extends job security protections for people who have a baby or need to take care of a relative. Tell us how does that change existing law, and what does it do, and how'd you get it?
Oh, sure. Well, it's a very important piece of a puzzle that calls for people to be able to take family leave and to be paid for it out of a fund that they pay for. Workers put money into a little fund out of the unemployment insurance that we all pay out of that paycheck. There's a small amount that goes into an account, a lockboxed account that is available if you need to take leave for medical reasons, either related to your own health or the health of a loved one, a family member, or to bond with a newborn. The problem with this leave program, and I've got to reinforce the fact that it is totally employee paid. The employer doesn't pay a dime. But the problem with this leave is that employers of companies that have under 50 employees don't have to take you back after you take the leave. So it's not job protected. So most people won't take the leave because they are afraid, and often rightly so, that after they take the leave that they're entitled to.
Oh,
that
so
they
there's
paid
no,
for.
there was no guarantee that you could get your position back. Your position was not held for you.
Correct. So people weren't taking the leave. In order for that leave to be meaningful, it has to be job protected. And that's what this bill did. It protected your ability to come back to your job after 12 weeks of leave. Some of it reimbursed through that fund that employees pay for, but the reimbursement only goes for 8 weeks, and it's only up to a maximum of 70% reimbursed. So if you're going to take that leave, you either had to have saved some money or be willing to forego your salary, unless your employer provides that program, which some do and most don't. But that last 4 or 5 weeks that you try to take is not job protected. And so employees find themselves taking a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe no time at all, because under California law, an employer only has to provide 3 days of paid sick leave per year. I mean, it's astonishing.
But yeah, and the Chamber of Commerce, your friends at the Chamber of Commerce termed this a job killer bill, which you consider a badge of honor since you lead the league in those. So the Republicans were against it, but you know, because the Democrats so control Sacramento, that a lot of the politics is the different factions of Democrats. So the moderate Democrats in the Assembly represented a problem for you for getting that passed. How did you persuade them to go for it?
Well, actually, it took a lot of arm twisting. It was not easy, but I think the discussion really has to revolve around the fact that people have responsibilities outside of their workplace. That particularly in this COVID world, families have got to care for each other or themselves when they get sick. Or have newborns and should be able to bond with those newborns. So the discussion really is, employers are not our masters, that we have responsibilities to our own health and to the health of our families, that in this COVID world in particular, not exclusively, this is something that extends beyond it. COVID isn't the only problem that people, or the only challenge that people deal with in their lives. But this COVID situation really put the spotlight on how important it is that people be able to take the time to care for their loved ones or themselves in situations of medical emergency. So we had the governor's support, Jerry. I think that was very critical. Yeah. This was something the governor had put in the budget to provide some assistance for smaller employers. And this was a bill that
and he's already signed it. Of course, the other thing that helped was this image that went viral of Assembly Member Buffy Wicks of Oakland nursing a 1-month-old on the floor. And then we had our very own Assembly member, soon to be Senator Monique Limon, who is also pregnant, running around, I guess, whipping the vote as well. Yes. Talk about that. What was that? That must have been an extraordinary moment.
Well, it was. I mean, Monique has been a rock star in this. She fought very hard, was trying to appeal to a number of the members, many of whom actually had taken family leave, but the pressure by the chamber and the business world, you know, we really aren't that. I think it's really critical. Let me just step back for a second. In this 21st century world, where we often have, in those families that are even intact, that we have 2 parents working, and that it's critical that women are in the workforce today. And if that is the case, we have to be able to accommodate the needs of working families. And of course, here you had Buffy Wicks with a 4-week-old baby who originally was going to vote by proxy. And she and I had talked a few weeks ago as I was counting votes. I mean, that is, at the end of the day, you got to know how to count. in this business, and her vote was going to be critical to get to 41. And she had assured me she was going to vote for the bill and that she would be voting by proxy. Suddenly, a few days earlier, I'm texting with her and to confirm her vote. She said, yes, I'll be there to vote, which I thought was kind of extraordinary because she has a little 4-week-old daughter named Ellie that she's nursing and a 2 or 3-year-old at home. So she was there. I needed her vote to get to 41. I was having a real challenge to get there in the first place. And then there's Monique Limon, who's about to have a baby, who's one of the whips, trying to get the votes. I mean, it was really quite a statement because we do have more women in the workplace today, and it's important that we get more women in the political arena, and many of them are going to be of childbearing years. We need to accommodate working families and working mothers, and that was probably about as good a statement, a picture being worth 1,000 words. And
Yeah,
at the end of the day, we got that vote.
And it didn't come out so well for the speaker, Anthony Rendon, who had decided that having a cesarean section was not a good enough excuse to be excused for COVID. All right, let's talk about another measure that got jammed through, and it's kind of a mess, SB 3088, the evictions bill. I've gotten a lot of commentary on this from readers and viewers that it really puts the burden so much on landlords and nobody else. So there's talk about what the mortgage or the rent relief is in the bill.
Yeah. You've got 3 interest groups here, and I think you need to kind of look at it from that perspective. You have the tenant, you've got the landlord, and you've got the banks and mortgage holders. Tenants, the last thing we need now is more people out on the streets. With COVID and with the just the fact that people need a place to call home. You have landlords, many of them, particularly the smaller landlords, who use that rent money to pay their mortgages and to provide some of the basic services that they're responsible for. Then you have the mortgage holders, and they're the ones that are the key here because without their participation, you then have them calling in loans. You have landlords who are going to lose their property, and you have tenants, if they are unable to pay the rent and are thrown out on the street, who are going to be challenging us with more COVID-related issues, completely undermining and disrupting our lives, both in terms of socially, economically, and health-wise. So we tried to get all 3 of these special and important interest groups to the table. The problem is the mortgage holders, 75% of them are federally controlled. The federal government has done very little to protect and to encourage the mortgage holders to forbear, as they call it, on calling in loans when landlords aren't able to pay their rent. We've had a little forbearance until the end of the year with some of the mortgages. But what we tried to do then, because we don't have that reach. The state doesn't have the reach into these federally chartered banks. That's called federal preemption. The state can do very little. But we can do something with landlords and tenants. So the way this worked is we said, look, up until January 31st, starting September 1 to January 31st, if tenants pay 25% of their monthly rent and tell their landlords that they can't pay the full rent or they can't pay more because of COVID-related issues, such as they've lost their job, or they're working 10 hours a week instead of 40 hours a week, or they've been sick and have had to quarantine or been hospitalized. If they tell the landlord that, the landlord then cannot evict them in California. Now the law extends through January 31st. If they pay that 25% after January 31st, they've got to pay the full pop. They've got to pay their full rent. If not, a landlord can evict them because of that. But if they haven't paid the full rent up until January 31st, but have paid 25% or more starting September 1st, they cannot be evicted for non-payment of rent during that period of time from September through January. Is that confusing?
No,
Absolutely.
no. I mean, it just seems like it leaves the landlord totally holding the bag, because if the tenant hasn't been able to pay their rent up until then, what are the chances that they're going to deliver the back rent, pay what they're owed? I mean, I can see people, keeping units off the market, not wanting to rent under these conditions, or raising the rent after they evict.
Sure.
There are all kinds of things.
Well, they have to be careful about raising the rent afterwards.
7%, I guess, is.
Yeah, I think at this point, yeah, there's a concern about landlords, and I share that. But we also don't want to see these mass evictions. So sort of the compromise that was reached is that the debt that exists because tenants have not been able to pay it isn't forgiven. What happens is a landlord can go after the tenant as part of a consumer debt, but cannot evict the tenant for that non-payment of rent. Again, the goal is, the federal government has got to step up here, Jerry. As we all know, the federal government can print money. They can operate at a deficit. The state cannot. And so the federal government has to do more to give relief to landlords, real relief, not money going into the pockets of the rich, which is what we've discovered has been a part of the problem. The money hasn't gone to where it's supposed to, but only helping the rich get richer. We've got to have a program set up by the federal government that's going to give relief to some of these landlords, particularly the ones that don't have that savings account that they can rely upon. And we need to have forbearance by the banks, and the federal government has to come in and provide whatever relief is available in order to make sure that the banks have what they need, but not more. And that we try to get through this problem and get back to normal as quickly as we possibly can.
Yeah. Okay. Messy stuff.
Messy stuff.
All right. Let me ask you about another thing on the police reform front. We had all the Black Lives Matter protest, and everyone was, united in this, but very little came out of the legislature in the form of police reform. Senate Bill 731, Steve Bradford, was an attempt to put a decertification system. California,
right.
Very few states that doesn't have. What happened with all that? Did the unions just assert their power?
Well, I think a part of the problem, Jerry, is that the legislative process is usually one where bills are vetted over an extended period of time. They go through a number of committees. Each committee looks at a particular aspect of the issue and comes up with what is determined to be the best outcome possible, given the various interests and competing interests that exist. Because of the session this year being so stunted, it really was very difficult to get bills through the process in a way that really made sense, that where bills would be workable, where they'd be clear enough so that the various groups that had to implement them would understand what the heck it is they're supposed to be implementing, and to the extent that those issues would then come before the court, that the court would have an idea of exactly how it would implement these things. A lot of these bills, Jerry, were rushed through. They're what we call gut and amend bills that never even went through the process in one house, let alone through another house. I think the Bradford bill was one that was a gut and amend. I supported the bill going through the process in hopes that it would get clarifications, it would get cleaned up, if you will, going through the assembly. There just was so little time that the clock ran out. And yes, I do believe that there were a lot of competing interests that stepped up and had an impact on resolution of that issue, but it will come back. It will be back because, yes, we do need to certify. I mean, when I first heard this bill, I was astonished that we don't already decertify.
We don't have a system. Yeah. Hap Freund.
We don't. We're one of, I think, only 5 states that doesn't.
Exactly.
And when you have a law enforcement officer who's been convicted of a felony who is still able to be a police officer, a law enforcement officer, you have to ask yourself, how is that? That should not be. And I think that will come back in the beginning of the year, be properly articulated and vetted and hopefully passed.
All right. And the last issue I want to ask you about is fire insurance. Dan Walters has a column today in Cal Matters about this, that there was not a plan approved. AB 2167 was one of the vehicles. But as I understand this, help me understand this, the insurance commissioner, Richard Lara, has issued an order that bans insurance companies in California from refusing to renew people in fire areas. But that order is going to expire, and there's nothing that's at the end of that. Is that correct?
That is correct. And here's part of the problem. The insurance company, there's just so much we can do to control the insurance industry. And he's done everything he can. The insurance industry, you know, we talk about the unions. The insurance industry is one of the most powerful and influential entities, interest groups in Sacramento. They are able to kill a lot of bills that come through the various insurance focused committees, and they are very, very effective and very powerful. I have to tell you, it was a source of enormous frustration for me.
Because of campaign contributions, or?
Well, I think that's part of it. Money in politics, we could talk about that all day. We've got to get money out of politics in order to more properly represent the interests of the people. But at this point in time, the insurance industry is a very, very powerful player in the legislative process, along with the different corporate interests. Anything that we do to try to impact their efforts is always challenged. That's why we set up an insurance commissioner, independently elected here in California, who has the power to do certain things to control the insurance industry, but frankly, not enough.
So what's the prognosis for those of us, or for people, I name no names, you know, living in high risk fire zones? You know, you get your insurance canceled, they won't renew. You know, where do things stand on that?
Well, we have something that is in place called the FAIR Plan. It's sort of the insurance of last resort. It's not the answer. It's not great insurance. One of the things that we need to do, and have been trying to do, is to encourage better planning. And that's a bill that I actually got passed at the end of session that's going to require, if we're going to build in the high fire areas, and I would argue that's not a very good idea, but if that building is going to occur, local jurisdictions have the ability to make those decisions through land use planning. Then we need to build in a way that's going to be as protective as possible from wildfires. Things like making sure we have more than one way to get in and out, making sure there's sufficient water supply to fight a fire in that area if it does occur, making sure we build using the most fire resistant elements, making sure we do what we call defensible space. And the goal is, if we do that, then insurance companies should be providing insurance in those circumstances. But the insurance industry has taken some very heavy hits over the last few years, and only God knows what the cost is going to be once these fires, the fire season ends. It's enormous. And they don't want to write insurance.
We're just starting.
We just started, I know. And you know, they want to, many of them are just going to leave the state. We can't force them to write insurance. So we have to do something to make it more palatable, more encouraging, attractive, whatever you want to call it, for them to write insurance.
A market assistance plan?
Some kind of market assistance plan. But again, who's going to fund that plan? The federal government? Not under this administration, where what we're being told is we need to sweep our forests.
Yeah, we forgot to sweep. That was the problem. That was
except that 60% of the forests in California are owned by the federal government.
Yeah, so, they have 47.5% of the state. Yeah, but who's counting?
Yeah.
All right. Hey, look. So this was your last night of session. You're termed out of the Senate after 8 years. You did your 6 years in the Assembly. You know, I guess there's a possibility the governor will call a special session before January, but this is pretty much it for you. How does that feel? What emotion did you experience going through this, the end of it.
Well, it's a little bittersweet, but you know, I think I had such a satisfying and successful 8 years in the Senate doing legislation that I think is really going to make a difference. That's really what I was hoping that I could do, protecting our coastline from oil drilling, doing a lot of work on the environment, requiring that now manufacturers have to take responsibility for the end of the life of their products. I did that with pharmaceuticals, protecting against the kind of destruction we're seeing with climate change, as far as requiring that we take a look at the impacts of climate when we do development in our community. Certainly the work I did on equal pay, women on corporate boards, trying to break that glass ceiling.
I think that was the real heavy lift stuff. The women on corporate boards, the equal pay, the family leave, and so on. I mean, I think that was a lot of unprecedented stuff, and got a lot of attention.
Yeah.
So okay, so you say in the Independent that there's a lot more mischief to be made. What does that mean? What are you going to do next? You're going to run for mayor, right? That's what I keep hearing.
No. You know, I have to tell you that running for office isn't so bad. Raising money is really just.
But
I think
for mayor,
something
that's a
needs to
piece of
change
cake for you. You know, what do you?
Oh, I think my electoral efforts are done. I'm certainly
Really?
excited about. Well, I mean, you never say never, but it's not in my crystal ball. I don't see it. And what I'm hoping to do is, you know, I've had 14 years of experience working on a lot of different issues. I don't see ending my interest, ending my passion for these things, but I think I'd rather kind of slow down a little bit. I would say this job is about 60 hours a week. I'd like to see a little bit more of my grandkids once this COVID thing is over. We live right next to this magnificent coastline. I really want to enjoy it more. I got a great husband, want to take more walks on the beach with him, and just enjoy life a little bit more, but still make some mischief in the process.
Long walks on the beach. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. I'm sorry. I'm not. I'm not seeing it. How about now? You had talked to me earlier some months ago. You know, you were thinking of maybe writing something about all this. Where does that?
Yeah. I think I'm going to do that. I need a little time to step away from it. Certainly, that last night of session could be a book in itself. You know, truth is stranger than fiction, and there's a lot I'd like to share. Perhaps inspire others. Politics is a messy business, but at the end of the day, it's the best system we've got, and I think there's a lot of good that can come of it. I'd like to inspire young women in particular to consider a life in the political world. I think we can help improve it, and I think there's a lot that can be learned from just life experience, and that I hope I can share with others.
All right. Well, hey, Beth, thanks for being with us, and congratulations on a great run. You and I don't always agree on policy things, but
it's okay.
You did a hell of a job representing your values, and I think the values of the Democratic Party. And you're going to come back, right, and talk about propositions with me one of these days soon.
Sure. Happy to do that.
A lot of heavy duty stuff on the ballot.
There's, you know, privacy issues and housing issues and the gig economy. There's a lot.
Yeah.
And good. I'm happy to do it.
8 weeks to go. Only 8 weeks to go before the election. 54.
You know, somebody said the other day that the days are slow, but the years are go fast.
All right.
I think that's a good point. Jerry, you be well. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and to represent this district. You know, it really has been an honor. I'm very lucky.
Congratulations.
You take care. Thank you.
Take care.